I'm glad the Queensland Government can bring the industry together so you can all actually catch up with each other. We should do it probably more often. My name's Andrew Mills. I'm the Queensland Government Chief Information Officer, and I'd like to welcome you to this morning's Partners in Technology briefing. Obviously, we need to probably do these a little bit more. The amount of interest was quite overwhelming, and we had quite a few people that couldn't come because we actually ran out of seats, so we'll work our way through that. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this event is taking place, and elders both past, present and emerging. In an event of emergency, we have emergency exits, and the assembly area is the grassed area in front of the art gallery. So and I presume staff will lead us where we need to go. We're pleased to bring the PiT briefing this morning. I'm delighted to see so many here. Today's format will include 4 presentations, taking us through to about 9:30. Following presentations, we will have a Q&A session until the conclusion of today's PiT at about 9:40. We'll then adjourn to the foyer at the entrance for networking, tea and coffee. To start the proceedings, I'd like to introduce Mr. Andrew Curthoys, I had to get that one right, Director Engagement and Task Force, Economic and Infrastructure Strategy at the Department of State Development, Manufacturing, Infrastructure and Planning. Andrew is an urban and regional planner with over 30 years' experience in planning for urban communities, infrastructure projects and policy delivery. He's passionate about asset management and better utilisation of public infrastructure and the opportunities that digitisation and digital engagement will bring to that part. He's also chair of the Queensland Government Business Information Modelling Working Group. His presentation will outline what BIM is, the principles and implementation and the opportunities. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew. It's great to be here today, and thanks very much for the opportunity. What I thought I'd do is just quickly run through, for some of you who may not know what BIM is, what the Queensland Government has been doing, what the strategy approach is going to be, and the implementation actions. This is going to take time for the Queensland Government. It's going to take time for industry, but we want to work together with industry to get good outcomes. So I'll just quickly run through a video explaining what BIM is for those of you who might not know what I'm talking about.
What is Building Information Modelling? Building Information Modelling, or BIM, is a process in which all the information and characteristics of a development or a building are recorded in a standardised manner to create a digital representation. The building is specified and designed as a range of intelligent elements. Because the elements are intelligent and aware of their dimensions and other specifications, such as materials, clashes, where elements should not or cannot go together, are readily identified, avoiding substantial costs and delays. Whilst BIM is a process rather than computer software per se, because of the volume of data that needs to be collected and the necessity to share it with all the participants, it does require software support. There are 4 levels or concepts of maturity in BIM, each with increasing capabilities. 3D BIM uses the data from the elements to create a 3-dimensional representation of the building. It can also include the ability to walk through to create a simulation. 4D BIM adds the time for each stage of the development, identifying the critical path for the project. 5D BIM associates the costs of each stage of development, providing a detailed cash flow schedule and enabling more accurate planning. 6D BIM links all the data collected during the design and build of the development to the life cycle of the building to enable the cost-effective ongoing operation of the facility. BIM offers the prospect of faster and more consistent project delivery with lower costs and risks. Projects using BIM should also have a lower environmental impact.
So we know what it is. Well, hopefully we've got some ideas on what it is. The role of government, though, is to provide certainty to industry to invest. So what have we been doing? We've been working with industry, particularly those in the architecture, engineering, construction sectors, to talk about what they are looking for from government decisions, what we need to do to improve government certainty, how we need to work with industry to get good outcomes. One of the things that we've done and we know is that major projects such as Cross River Rail, Queen's Wharf, are already using BIM and BIM-enabled technology to reduce clash detection, to improve the outcomes, to transmit more information more readily and more quickly, and also to work with all the contractors involved. It's generating a lot of data, enormous amount of data, and that's being fed back in to improve the construction processes, the design processes, and the engineering processes. But what we're also working, and I represent Queensland on the Australasian BIM Advisory Board, so we're working to establish national consistent standards nationally which link to international standards. And the reason for that is that we don't want to have the Queensland bespoke system, simply because we don't want companies to have to retool or adjust their standards to have to work in Queensland. We want them to be able to work nationally, and for those with a far reach, we want them to be able to work internationally. So we're aligning a lot of our work to the ISO 19650 standard on BIM, which was released at the end of last year, and we're working on the Australasian regional standards, Australia and New Zealand. But the big thing for government is looking at what the implementation requirements are, and of course review and evaluate all the way through. That's absolutely critical. So what the government decided at the end of last year was that the principles will be released. There'd been an overarching 5-year work plan that was endorsed and outlines the implementation requirements for agencies. So all major government projects, which are $50 million or more, which enter through the business case process that Building Queensland operates from 1 July, need to be BIM enabled. So there's a lot of work that has been going on in the background to get agencies ready for that. There's a lot of work that will go on into the future as more and more agencies are putting more projects through the Building Queensland process. What does it mean for industry? It means there's an opportunity that when you invest in new technology which is BIM enabled and you want to work with the Queensland Government, it provides confidence that you'll be aligned to what the Queensland Government is doing. So our work plan for this year is to get agencies developing implementation plans by 1 July, and I can say that all the agencies with those major projects above 50 million are well on the way to having implementation plans in place. Right, the major agencies, as you expect, would be Transport and Main Roads, Department of Education, Department of Health, Housing and Public Works. Okay. Corrective Services also has some projects. Arts Queensland's looking at the new performing arts venue that will be developed on the Playhouse Green as well. So there are major projects that are rolling through that are already starting to look at the BIM-enabled requirements. We have to report progress through the State Infrastructure Plan, Part B, and there's an update that comes out annually. So the first progress report will come out in July 2020, just identifying how agencies are going. Now I know from experience that some agencies will do it really well, others will be doing it okay, and there'll be some that will be all scratching their heads going, hang on, what have you missed? How could you have missed this important bit? And don't worry, industry will also tell me when we're going well, I hope. They'll certainly tell me when we're not meeting what we said we were going to do. I've already got a number of BIM colleagues telling us that we can do better, and they're right, we can. But part of the policy development process means that we're going to look at what are the data management requirements, what are the facilities management requirements, and what do we need to do to support industry and industry capability development, but also reflect back to the public service with the Queensland Government capability development. And that's key. You know, this is a big cultural change piece. This will probably take us to 2023 to actually, start to have a level of confidence and everything is moving and working well. And then we'll have to look at our next phase of work that we're going to do. But we've got to start somewhere. If we don't start, we won't finish. So that's what we're doing. We're getting underway. Of course, there'll be implementation reporting that we'll go through. And certainly I know that there are already ministers who are quite interested in this, including the Minister for Sport, Recreation, Innovation, Housing and Public Works, Minister de Brenny. So implementation plans will include projects that will implement BIM, some governance, obviously what the milestones are going to look like, how they're engaging with their stakeholders, which includes industry, which includes clients, which includes providers, and what they're doing to improve their capability, assessment and development. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Andrew. And in a sense, it's probably, from my memory anyway, for the last 5 years, it's the first time we've brought in a non-ICT approach. And interestingly, if you haven't picked it up, the data management bit is the area we are getting heavily involved and supporting Andrew in. But also this overlaps with other industries and an opportunity not to directly work with government, but to get out there and work with the construction and building industry. The area Andrew didn't talk about, which I've actually got much more interest in, is how do we monitor and maintain the built environment. There's a lot of issues around workers' health, dangerous goods we didn't know were dangerous when they were put in, that we are finding it really difficult to work our way through. So the opportunity to actually maintain BIM for the built environment and retrofit it into our current environment is actually also a key conversation going on. And interestingly, if you take it to the nth degree, the ability to build a digital twin of Queensland, and so we actually have a digital capability to look at what's happening in Queensland and plan better, is kind of a long-term view. There is some work going on in that space, and hopefully we'll be able to bring that to you in the next one. Our second speaker is Mr. Greg Watts, Chief Information Officer, Department of Employment, Small Business and Training. Greg has been the CEO at DESBIT, as we call it, since February 2019. His focus has been on implementation of foundational services to support the department. Interesting presentation because this is a brand new department. It's the combination of bits from 5 previous departments. 8 previous departments. Sorry, Greg, I kind of miscounted there. That actually had no base department when it joined. So it was a brand new organisation that took bits from other departments and didn't have anything to start with. So Greg's bringing along a kind of a challenge in that space. Greg has over 24 years experience leading ICT departments in strategy, governance, solutions, operational services and commercial ICT management. He spans the whole ICT lifecycle with emphasis in developing organisational culture that supports high performance. Now, he will now provide an overview of DESBIT's ICT priorities. Thanks, Greg.
All right. Thanks very much, Andrew, and thanks for the opportunity to speak here today, and thanks to QGCO for organising the day. As Andrew mentioned, I've only been with DESBIT for a relatively short period of time, and I'd like to take you on just a short journey in the time that I have in terms of where DESBIT's come from, what I found when I first commenced in the role, and the go forward from where we are now. So that's what I'm intending to do, as long as I can use this contraption. Oh, there we go. Excellent. All right, so today I'll introduce DESBIT briefly. I'll talk about DESBIT ICT as it currently is and how it will evolve over time, hopefully evolve over time. Some key challenges we're currently working on. Some detail around the work we're doing in the information and digital strategy space for the department and some of our current activities and projects. So introduction to DESBIT. DESBIT broadly falls into the category of an economic agency, so an economic portfolio. And its purpose is to increase economic participation by providing trusted advice and support that enables both sustainable small business opportunities and a skilled workforce now and into the future. So that's the reason why it was created. It's very unusual in this day and age for a department to be stood up from scratch. It is a deliberate intention of the government to focus on this area in an economic sense to build capability within the state. Now, it's been now in flight for getting close to 17, 18 months. And always with these sorts of MOGs, there's an initiative to bring the department together. So there's a lot of enabling work going on at the moment in the department around people and services, our working environments, i.e. physical locations, our technology and systems, always good to see the key plank in there, and values and behaviours. So that's where DESBIT is and where we're moving at the moment in terms of the creation of the department. DESBIT ICT specifically, I didn't want to give you a death by PowerPoint or a death by org structure. It is actually a very simple arrangement at the moment. It's only a small IT shop, about 22 FTEs at the moment. It'll grow to an extent over time, but it will never be a big IT shop, and I'll talk a little more about that later on. 2 broad groups around information strategy and VET systems. VET is vocational education and training. So the agency has adopted from the training functional area from education has come into the department, and with it came the vet systems and vets application portfolios. Starting to build up a new structure, a new operating model for ICT within the department, looking at some traditional elements around strategy, architecture and governance, program and project delivery, vendor and contract management and digital service delivery. That's very much around an aggregate model that's driven around service integration and management. As I mentioned, this will not be an organisation that will deliver commodity services. It will not have desktop staff running around doing desktop things. It will not have data centres. It will not operate in that way. DESBT has a wonderful opportunity right in front of it from an ICT and digital point of view to actually be a department that is digital by design. There are legacy platforms, most definitely, but those legacy platforms are right in the space where they need to be reformed, restructured, transformed. The business needs that in terms of its evolution, and the technology certainly needs it in terms of its life cycle. So DESBT has a wonderful opportunity to actually do things quite differently to the traditional structures that we've had in Queensland Government ICT. And having spent quite a bit of time in public safety, very traditional, heavy industrial ICT environment, it's very exciting from my point of view to have this opportunity to be able to work on this. So the service integration management model is very much about looking to the market to provide us with services. Having a small core team in-house to manage those services, but fundamentally to have our services delivered from the marketplace. All right, so in terms of our key challenges, standing up a new department, we've got functions, as Andrew mentioned a little bit earlier, from 8 different departments. With that came ICT services from 5 different services, from 5 different agencies providing ICT services for those 8 different departments. 3 physical networks are still operating. It originally started at 5, I believe. And the MOG activities are still ongoing. So this is still a very large focus for me, is actually standing DESBT up as a sovereign department that's able to deliver its services in a way that it does have control and autonomy around the requirements that drive those services. In that light, the Information Steering Committee is starting to gather momentum, which reminds me I need a QG CIO rep on the Information Steering Committee. I keep on forgetting to do that. Our digital and strategy and architecture, I'll talk a little bit more about that coming up, but I can see a lot of familiar faces in the room, and those people that do know me, that have worked for me previously, will know that I very much come from the place that says you've got to have a strategy, you've got to have an operating model. Without those 2 components, you are actually flying blind. You've got to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. And that's very much the foundational work that I'm embarking on at the moment. Information security, very important, extremely high priority across Queensland Government at the moment. We're doing the ISMS work at the moment. We've been a laggard with that, admittedly, but we are now rapidly building maturity in that space. Our collaboration platform, we've just recently finished our migration to Office 365 from the various agencies that have come through. The challenge now is to really start to leverage that platform. It's all very nice to move your mailboxes and move your archives, but how are you actually going to use that platform to enable genuine collaboration and communication across the department? Our information management, the department doesn't have an EDRMS yet, it doesn't have a ministerial and executive correspondence system yet. We are talking, in many respects, a lot of ground zero considerations here. The CRM platform, there's 3 CRM platforms, they need to be consolidated. The vet systems platform hasn't been invested in properly for around about a decade, so it needs a lot of work. Our BAU services, we need to simplify. I would, of any of the agencies that are providing services to us at the moment in the audience, I'd thank you very much for all the work you've been doing. It's great. From my point of view, it's really complex. It's very difficult for me as the CIO to say, yes, I can hit service levels against services for you, Director General. it's quite a difficult place at the moment in that regard, so I need to simplify and I need to have end-to-end accountability for the services. All right, in terms of our information and digital strategy, again, I won't bore you with this particularly, but we are going through a relatively traditional approach to this in terms of clearly understanding where we are at the moment in our current state, what our capabilities across the business are, particularly our business capabilities. Desbert is a relatively simple business if you break it down in an architectural sense. A lot of the activity is around grants management, case management, and traditional customer relationship management. And if you think about those domains, you can then start to form up relatively quickly what your technology response needs to be. And very much that response will be about enabling a digital platform that the department can over time leverage for whatever requirement comes through. And we'll be working that through to the point where we'll have our roadmaps in place and our technology definitions will be in place over the next 6 months or so, with our target state being completed. Excuse me. So in that regard, we'll be identifying key business issues and opportunities, develop the business and industry context that we work in, provide direction to the business to allow innovation and development. We're looking for a draft, or I'm looking for a draft of this to be done toward the end of May. There is currently on the Desbert website an ICT strategy. I believe that will be superseded once this work is done. We'll be cycling through this work and making it very visible to industry, because it will have an investment roadmap within it that has a heavy reliance on industry. So we will be doing that. Okay, our current initiatives. Information digital strategy that I just spoke about, that is a work in progress, and it's very much a defining piece of work for me. The Office 365 rollout is just completed. The leverage point is what's important now. I think that in Queensland Government we've been very good at adopting Office 365, but really leveraging the platform is the challenge that we now really need to embrace. MEX, which is Ministerial and Executive Correspondence System, that project is in flight. It will be completed around the end of June. So we will be able to start to manage some of our internal correspondence. Our Information Security Management System will be in place and operating also by around the end of June. Our MOG activities, that is very much around the residual work associated with standing up the department, but it's also about the sovereignty of the department. So at the moment, it's about getting the services that are currently provided by our other service providers into arrangements that we can then control, as I mentioned earlier. And I'll talk about that just a little bit more. Our vet systems baseline refresh, which is looking at vet systems, the current state, the risks in particular, and how those risks need to evolve over time, and how we can resolve them in the terms of the roadmap. And we're doing a consolidated CRM roadmap at the moment as well, which will bring together all the CRM requirements for the department and start to enable that. One element that will start to flow out of the digital strategy in particular will be our analytics strategy and what that needs to look like for the department, and our core enabling information architecture that is able to be put in place to be consumed by various services. Now, our BAU services, at the moment, as I mentioned, we've got services and being delivered very well from a range of different government agencies at the moment. Our intention is over the next, between now and Christmas, is to go out to market for a range of our commodity services, and no doubt there'll be a range of people in the room that will be interested in that work. That is the full service management life cycle, from service desk through to our physical network. So that work will be coming out sooner rather than later. There is a very high priority, as you can appreciate, inside the department to get that particular service up and running and moving forward. And we are starting to build up the specifications and the models that we need to be able to be a good commercial partner with the market in that regard. Because I do firmly believe that and this is based on my own personal experience, may not be generally the case for every agency, that we can always do better with our commercial approach to the market. We can be a much better customer than perhaps we have been in the past, and we need to make sure that we have our act together in such a way that our requirements are very clear and that we can have excuse me, very constructive dialogue with the market about a range of very key services for the department. And that's what I was going to say. I just wanted to thank you very much. I do look forward to these opportunities when they arise, and yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Greg. For those in the room that don't know what MOG stands for, it's Machinery of Government Changes. So if you we tend to use acronyms at times. The reason we asked for that presentation is it actually brings a glimpse of the future. Government's moving more and more towards separating out that digital CIO role from what was traditionally running a information division. And so DESBIT will never have an IT shop that we actually probably understand of each agency having. So sourcing services from other agencies and sourcing services from the market is really important, and actually it's a key one. And when we look around government, that change is starting to happen. It's been happening for a few years now, but it's starting to accelerate much more. And I think you'll start seeing that change starting to accelerate in, particularly with the digital disruption, etc. Our business parts of our organisation are crying out for support from some dedicated people to start thinking strategically about the business and what digital does, not just deliver business as usual services. And we're starting to see that coming right across a lot of agencies. So be aware of that, and I think it actually works it through. And the conversation we're having with Greg particularly is around how to leverage the current relationships government's already got and actually broadening those and working them way through. And you'll actually notice over the last period of time a series of SOAs, panels being put in place to support agencies sourcing those types of services. So that's giving the choice to the business to meet its business need in a structured way and leveraging government's ability to work across. And also giving Greg the opportunity, because there will be a change sometime in the future, of actually making sure that that change doesn't disrupt business. And we're working much towards, and you'll hear us talk about MOG-proof quite regularly, attempting to MOG-proof our organisations and actually help them work their way through those changes. Okay, our third presenter is Darren Bond, Chief Information Officer of the Department of Child Safety, Youth and Women, and Department of Community, Disability Services and Seniors. And so in some senses, Darren's role has changed. He now supports two departments. So interestingly, again, the change. We had a big change. We didn't set up a second office to support this as a department split. We said, basically, we've got the capability, let's keep it together and keep it going, but also support both those departments. So in a sense, two bosses makes life a tad interesting, but that's part of being a CIO. Darren has over 31 years' experience in government, including an extensive background in senior executive role. He has been the Chief Information Officer since 2012, where he's led the ICT-enabled delivery of a wide range of human and social services reforms before becoming the Assistant Director General and Chief Information and Innovation Officer. God, Darren, can you get it any longer? For the Department of Child Safety, Youth, Women and the Department of Community, Disability Services and Seniors in 2017. Darren's presentation outlines the once-in-a-generation strategic transformation of the core ICT systems and capabilities that underpin the delivery of child safety and youth justice services in Queensland. Thank you, Darren.
Thank you, Andrew, and welcome everyone, and thank you for coming along this morning, listening to the presentation. I want to cover a couple of things. I want to give you a bit of an outline of the departments, having two, and it's actually across three departments, so having three bosses is always fun and somewhat challenging. It's funny how yesterday they were together and best friends, and today they're apart and, I'll just say, still best friends. So I want to give you an outline of the departments. I want to give you a feel about the digitisation that we're doing and the work we're doing to reform those agencies. As Andrew says, it's a new role. It's no longer around the boxes and wires. Very much we're looking that to be commodity services and trying to buy those services. We want to move into that digitisation space, higher up the architectural ladder, if you want to think of it like that. And I do want to touch on our large initiative that's coming up, our ICMS replacement program. Some of you may know about it, and some of you have actually helped us get to where we are today. So I want to touch on that a little bit as well. Let's see if I can work this, Greg. Oh. Okay, so just very quickly, supporting 3 agencies, Child Safety, Youth and Women, DATSIP. That relationship is a little more purchaser-provider, and then Communities, Disabilities Services and Seniors. So I'm the CIO across the 2 agencies on the right-hand side here. And I wanted to drill in on Child Safety, Youth and Women today. So the agency itself has a key role in ensuring that we protect vulnerable Queenslanders. The agency, it's very easy to get very passionate about the services that the agency delivers. And I'll just go through these services very quickly to give you a feel. The first one is around child safety. So that's ensuring that children in Queensland who don't have an adult who can look after them and protect them are looked after. Disturbingly, the state receives about 170,000 notifications of children who are in trouble. So each year we respond to those 170,000 calls, and we ensure that those children are looked after, that parents have the skills and abilities to look after their children wherever possible, or in the extreme case, the state will step in and become the parent of that child. The second one is youth justice, also a challenging service to deliver. We run 2 detention centres across the state, one down here in Brisbane and one up in Rockhampton. And the real focus for government at the moment is to work on prevention, to try and help kids, get on the right path and not even come to the attention of the judiciary and us in the first instance. So those prevention, predictive type strategies are very important to us, and you can see the link here to how we might use data to help us to help kids as early as possible and intervene as early as possible. And it's not just the child, it's typically the whole family that may need support. The next one is domestic and family violence prevention. Obviously, DV is another challenge that society faces to try and reduce the amount of abuse and violence that occurs typically from men to women. And if I can just give you a takeaway on this one, it's to highlight that in DV we see a lot of women very involved and working to make it a safer community, but if I can stress, it's really a men's issue. So typically the violence is perpetrated by men, and for all men in the audience, if I can urge you to be part of the change to make sure that that violence is nipped in the bud, and if we can prevent it as much as possible. So if you notice it, put your hand up and try and help that person to prevent it. The last 2, youth and women. So youth is very much about helping youth through their formative years. We work a lot on suicide prevention strategies, working with youth. We've got a youth consultative committee that we work with to get their ideas about how government can deliver services. And the last one is around women and ensuring equity for all of us in society. If I link it to the Advancing Queensland priorities, we really align with all of them. It's probably a long bow around protecting the Great Barrier Reef, but where we can, we do our part. But we do actually take a lead in the bottom right here around keeping communities safe, and obviously very involved in the healthy component and giving all our children a great start. And we work with other agencies to try and give a much more joined up response. So rather than each agency responding, trying to get agencies to work together to respond to these challenges. Let me drill in on some of the digital initiatives we've got. If I can highlight a couple for you. I'd like to highlight Kickbox and Carer Connect. These 2 are components that we've built or tools that we've built that are in the hands of children for Kickbox. So Kick is Kids in Care, KIC. And it allows them to record their life from a digital perspective. So they can take photos, they can have important documents, they can set goals, they can put important meetings that they need to attend. And this is for kids who are in the care of the state who otherwise wouldn't have someone to keep those things for them. So if you think of a young child who moves around a lot between placements, that child may not have the opportunity to see their baby photos as they get older because they've moved from family to family. The department does try to hold them, but that's fairly hit and miss. And some kids leave care without anything. So this is a tool to allow them to have a lot more ownership of their own identity. And Carer Connect is the other side of that picture, which is the carers, the foster carers who may look after those kids, and allows them to contribute to that kid's life's story. There are a couple of others there. Sortly is Sort Out Your Life. So that's for children who are transitioning from us into adulthood, and it's some strategies around how they might do things like get a job, get an apartment, get their driver's licence. The last one I'll touch on here is Our Child. Our Child sadly comes from a tragedy that occurred. Tiali Palmer, a young girl who you would know because it was in the press quite recently, and was sadly killed by her foster father, as it turns out. The response of government when she was first missing was a little wanting, to be honest, and there was a recommendation around improving the way we share information. So rather than us getting together when a child is missing and talking about, I might have this information, I'll need to check the legislation to see if I can share it with you. And even though that might be done quickly and take a couple of hours when a child is missing is a long time. So we built this platform, and I think it probably could be the first time where live information is pulled from the core systems of these agencies to bring that information together to allow police and ourselves to assist us in looking for that child. So it takes information from our systems, from education. So we can see whether the child's been at school for the last 2 weeks. We can see the contacts that the child might have. We can see inconsistencies between systems across government. It takes information from the Office of Public Guardian. So we can see the last time that, that someone might have paid a visit to that child. It takes information from Queensland Health. So if they present at an emergency ward, we would know about that straight away. And all of a sudden, that gives us much better information, much richer information to be able to find children who go missing. Let me just play a quick video, give you a feel about Kickbox, I hope.
Kickbox is an app for kids in care, designed by kids in care and young people with a care experience. The app is a safe place to store your memories and information. Only you and your child safety workers can see what's in your Kickbox account. Kickbox makes it easy to locate important documents wherever you are. Imagine you're applying for a job and you need your birth certificate. No problem. It's as simple as logging in and clicking on the link. The app connects you with your child safety workers. You can check out their profiles and chat with them using the private message function. Messaging is a great way just to say hey or to tell your CSO how you're feeling. If something is going on and you want to tell your CSO but you don't want to call them, send them a message instead. You can even see when they've read your message. Kickbox is also a safe place for you to create the goals that you want to achieve. You can keep track of what you may want to do in the future and look back at goals to reflect on what you've already achieved. This helps your CSO understand what your goals are so that they can help you take the right steps to achieve them. My life in Kickbox is a bit like a secure digital photo album. You and your CSO can see stories, photos and videos and create lasting memories. There's no limit to the memories that can be stored here, and you'll always have access to them. Your life story is important, your identity is important, you are important. Document it all here for your future self and imagine 10 years from now being able to look back at your milestones. Laugh, cry, cringe, but most importantly, celebrate your journey. Speak to your CSO today about how you can register for Kickbox.
So you can see how easy it is to become very passionate about what we do and the difference that we can make to kids directly. think I almost started dancing there, so I need to be careful. Let me drill in on our ICMS replacement program. The Integrated Client Management System is our core case management solution that we use across both child safety and youth justice, so it covers both areas. And that system was implemented in the very early 2000s. The design goes back to then. And we're now looking at a program that will, over a number of years, replace that particular solution. The key approach, though, is that we'll take this in a very modular way, and we will replace components and modules, so we will have the two systems working for a number of years and closely integrated. If I just look very quickly at the approach that we're taking, and there's probably nothing radical here, but a key message is that it's a business reform. So the way that we've set up the program is we've placed it within the business. The business will lead the program. Obviously, I'll be a key part of it, and we'll have technical people and technical partners as a key part of it, but we will balance that technology with the business design and the business change. So the diagram on the right-hand side there gives you a feel how we want to get that balance just right. We don't want to run ahead with a technology-based solution. And those reforms are built on a couple of existing reforms that are already in place. So a number of years ago, there was a child safety reform around Carmody, and there's actually a youth justice reform that's going on now that will be announced soon. It'll be very client-centric, so we'll make sure that we put the client in the middle, and integration is a key part. So that component I showed you about Our Child, we'll use that technology to share information. So as families and children come to our attention, we'll be able to draw information from a variety of data sources across government. It'll be, at the moment, we're looking at a 4-year program that's still under planning, so 4 to 5 years, and we'll actually start very, very shortly. And this is with the Cabinet Budget Review Committee now for the funding for the first year. The invitation to offer for us to get a partner or a number of partners is actually commencing straight away. So the forward procurement notice is now available on the Q Tenders website. That's the reference number. So please have a look at that, and you may want to consider applying or putting your name down, name in the hat, to do some work with us around this space. Let me just talk about the domains that we're looking at. The first one, and I'll go slightly out of order, sorry, but the first one's around business design and integration. So we do want a partner who can work with us on designing the business, taking us through that design process. As I said, we've got a number of reforms already in place. We know strategically where we want to go, but it's getting down to that detailed business design. The next one in the blue is a systems implementation partner, so a typical SI partner that will help us with the technology. The technology is already selected and will be a Microsoft Dynamics platform. We'll then look at testing services, organisational change management that'll take us through changing and change management processes, data migration, and one we're calling innovation, so anything new that we haven't sort of covered in the other areas. So it might be new search tools or new capabilities, drones, who knows. We don't want to narrow your thoughts around that. So the idea will be that we develop panels for these, and as part of the first process, we'll select partners off these panels to be able to work with us on the first phase of the program. Just to give you a feel of timelines, very high level, in the week, I'll say the week of, the 1st of June, we'll actually have the ITO period open, and that'll be open for 1 month. We'll then go into the panel selection, and the next phase will be selecting off that panel to work with us in the first phase. So we're looking at this being completed around sort of that late August, early September timeframe, and someone to then work with us from there on. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I reckon you're probably the most presented person at PiT since my time, actually. I think you've been here quite a bit. A couple of issues out of Darren's, I think. In fact, a really challenging information management environment, some fairly sensitive data that it works, particularly on the client side. And Darren's big challenge is the kind of mix between customer and client. Some of his, if you look at Kickbox, it moves from a client platform to a customer platform when they turn 18 because it's theirs. And so there's some really challenging issues around identity and working those issues through. And interestingly, while he didn't mention it, when you look at quite a few of these things, there's a really key issue around responsive government and how we are more responsive to our citizens and how we work with them, and there's some good examples there of working that. And I would also mention Our Child. I kind of think it's probably it is a kind of bit of a first of live data being available, not canned, and it's not data laked, it is actually live out of the systems. And actually it's an approach we're trying to take for information sharing. Leaving the data close to the business, but making it available when people need it for improved service delivery, and that's a key issue. And kind of when you start comparing the analytics requirement to the service delivery requirement, there's quite a bit of differences. I'd also talk about shorthand of ICMS replace. We actually call it the social platform. This is a new way of doing business. Poor old Darren is one of the leads on how we're changing the way we deliver future business systems. You'll notice it's not a big bang, it's not lift and replace. It's about a gradual replacement. I kind of talk about grandfather's axe. It's had many heads and many handles, but it'll still be ICMS at the end. The technology will change, but the capability will move with the business. And interestingly, Darren has a real challenge in a sense of incremental delivery and going back and proving functionality and capability on the way through that process to CBRC to have the program go forward. So his team haven't got the full budget. They've got an indication of what they've got to spend over the period of time. They're going to get some money to prove and then come back. So in a sense, you'll notice it's quite a different approach. There's not a big 5-year program going out for a single tender to deliver something at the end of 5 years. It's about delivering and providing business value on the way through. And you'll see much more of this happening. We're seeing 3 or 4 of these coming through. And we believe it's the only way we can actually improve in the way we do business, and it's working it through. Okay, our fourth speaker today is Narelle Doss, and has been the Acting Chief Digital Strategy Officer at eHealth Queensland since late 2017. With more than 20 years' experience in working in Queensland public health system, she has significant frontline hospital experience, a detailed understanding of the operational side of hospital and health service management, particularly as it relates to information systems management. Most recently, Narelle has been the Director within the Healthcare Improvement Unit within Clinical Excellence Division. In this role, Narelle has successfully led a number of major organisational improvement initiatives, including the GP access to the viewer, which I think is actually also a fairly world-leading capability, and I notice New South Wales are trialling it at Wagga at the moment, so it's interesting to see that they're actually starting a trial, an integrated referral management system, and establishing the patient online portal. Thank you, Narelle.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrew, and thank you very much for having me here today. I'm going to, divide the presentation in 2 parts. I wanted just to take the opportunity of setting a bit of the landscape in terms of where we are at from a digital point of view, and then just highlight some of the key strategies that we're currently working on. Okay, I too have to master this. I think it's probably really important to highlight why invest in digital technology from a health perspective. We know that not only do we need to do better for the patients that we currently have in the system, but we have some system challenges coming down the pipeline. One of which is a growing population. So it's estimated that perhaps by the year 2056, we will have doubled our population. And within that, we know that 1 in 4 will be aged over 65. Almost half of those aged over 65 will be dealing with a chronic disease. So in terms of actually addressing those challenges, plus a challenge in the workforce that's able to deliver those care, that care to the patients, we need to actually invest in digital technology. So in order to address those challenges, Queensland, like elsewhere, has developed a number of strategies and visionary documents over the last few years. And again, it's a case of really underlining the digital change that we need to invest in, And as has already been highlighted today, how do we do that also across all government agencies and the government agenda? Like elsewhere, we don't necessarily directly align to all the elements there on your left-hand side, but we certainly go away to working across different government organisations. So this is, I guess, what the digital health landscape currently looks like. If we're going to achieve that vision, if we're actually going to be able to improve the health of Queenslanders and have them, I guess, amongst the healthiest in the world by 2026, we need to ensure that all the investment that we make come back to those key elements. So everything that we start to look at or to consider, we need to ensure that we map it back to those particular themes. And those particular themes, I guess, is ensuring that we continue to provide a high reliability healthcare organisation, that we focus on integrating our care and population health and really working across the health sector. I'm sure you've probably all seen this document. So this really looks at in our investment strategy. It basically provides a cohesive and comprehensive plan for Queensland Health's ICT investment priorities. We have $1.2 billion worth of initiatives in the pipeline. We have over 100 different discrete programs that are in various stages of planning, implementation, etc., that will contribute to this particular agenda. And as you can see, they really start to go across the whole sector in terms of actually saying we're investing in the clinical systems as well as the foundational capability in terms of infrastructure and business and supporting systems as well. The Digital Hospital Program. I'm not going to go through this slide in detail, but I've included it in there to give you a little bit of an understanding of one of our major transformation journeys that we're undertaking. This slide's already out of date. It actually calls out that we've got 11 acute hospitals live with our EMR. We're actually now up to 15. But what it actually highlights is that we continue to see an absolute shift in ensuring that the digital agenda provides safer care with efficiency and productivity benefits. And again, that's really important, as I've mentioned, in terms of what we are trying to achieve in terms of those challenges in the system and how we can then actually come through and measure that the investments that we're making is actually contributing to improving that quality of care that we're providing, and we're seeing those efficiencies, as I said on that slide. Again, another snapshot in terms of the volume of activity that's occurring in the system. Not only do you get a bit of a snapshot of the enormity of what this looks like, it's also, I guess, underpinning a broader agenda, and that's around information. So with everything that we want to be able to do in the future, having access to an increasing growing number of information about our patients, we can again bring that back to our analytics agenda, coming back in terms of, addressing populations at risk and likewise. And at the same time that we're investing, as I mentioned, in terms of the software, we're also investing in our infrastructure. So none of our digital hospitals can actually go live unless they have unless they have an infrastructure uplift. And this is the same in terms of as we continue to add additional information systems to our jigsaw puzzle, we need to continue to make sure that we've got a contemporary platform in terms of our infrastructure. So again, just in the last 12 months, we've delivered greater than 5,000 wireless access points, 150 kilometres of cabling, and so on and so forth. So if that's where we've been, and that's currently our landscape at present, very high-level snapshot, what are the other things that we're actually doing to be able to move forward? The Rural and Remote Digital Healthcare Strategy. I mentioned the challenges in the system, For us, in terms of rural and remote, we know that there are higher mortality rates, lower life expectancy, and a high level of preventable admissions. We need to also address the inequities in terms of access to healthcare, the burden of disease, not only for those populations at risk, as I mentioned, but we have vulnerabilities in terms of our children and also Indigenous population. We need to, as I've mentioned, provide that equity in terms of the digital access. We have a third of our population living in 2/3 of our state. We need to then create a number of, documents that will work towards addressing what we need to invest in and how we need to do that. We have obviously a digital blueprint coming out, and I won't go through all of them. The delivery framework, how we're actually going to get there, and what is it going to look for us. We need to identify alternate technologies that will support the alternate models of care that we have in this particular area. And we need to ensure that fundamentally we continue to support our transient population in terms of our workforce that we have as well, and ensure that we're providing, the right tools and the right services. The framework or the strategy is the starting point. Well, as I said, talk about those high-level things. Once we've taken care of that particular approach, we will be coming back to consider what do the actual digital solutions look like. We know that we can start to categorise our facilities across the state in the way that they provide care to their patients, and that will provide, the foundation in terms of what we then identify that those particular service offerings require. The genomic strategy. So I've mentioned obviously the increasing challenges that we have. Of course, one of them comes down to the increasing challenge we have of the rising costs that it looks like to be able to provide a healthcare setting. Precision medicine is a healthcare model that proposes, significant benefits for us to be able to personalise healthcare for our patients, not only in terms of the prevention, but in essence in terms of that diagnosis and treatment as well. We know that there are approximately 4,000 genomes that have been identified to cause disease or affect response to treatment, and we know there's another 6,500 that have been implicated in that particular area. If we then can start to work out how we can target those genomes and provide that targeted care, we know that they'll provide some great benefits in the system. Again, the advances in technology certainly look like that we can do the genome testing for a whole series rather than just one, far cheaper than what we could before. And in terms of comparing that to traditional tests, we also know that there's going to be some cost saves in that particular space. The digital genomic strategy then fundamentally goes towards supporting that particular clinical care. We have a 6-year plan that covers 3 different horizons. Fundamentally, looking at how do we start to move forward of creating the appropriate frameworks and guidance in terms of what that needs to look like, and also moving all the way through to the last actual tranche or horizon to provide that integrated care with our digital hospital. That's taking everything all the way through from creating, or requesting that test to actually understanding and utilising it in everyday healthcare delivery. I've mentioned before that we're creating an enormous amount of information at the moment and the benefits that brings back into the healthcare setting to be able to provide not only direct care for the patients at the time that they're in our facility, but stepping back from that and providing, greater opportunities to work across the digital and landscape setting with our primary care partners to actually drive that integrated care, etc. We've created our health informatics strategy that really then starts to look at the investment that we need to make in a number of different domains, and I'm sure you'd be familiar with these, all the way through from governance to security, consent management, how we actually provide that knowledge and intelligence back into the healthcare setting. Again, we've got a horizontal approach that we are targeting things from a 3, 5 and 7 year perspective, and just in our first horizon for the first 3 years, we already have about 90 recommendations that we'll be moving through with. This is obviously working with our hospital and health services at that point of care, and where they're collecting the information in terms of how we can do that better. We need to make sure that we continue to strive and grow our data custodians and our information custodians, and really most importantly provide the digital literacy to our workforce in terms of what that means of actually obtaining that information and how we can use it for the clinical care. We also know that at the moment in the system, the largest contributor to premature death is individual behaviour. We again know that if knowledge is in power, then we need to be able to empower our consumers as much as possible. The stats indicate that 1 in 3 people utilise or have access to a health app, and 45% of those with chronic disease will be using apps. However, there's probably in excess of 25,000 health apps in the marketplace at the moment. And what we don't have is a really good picture in terms of understanding how do we recommend those apps to our patients? How do we then determine the validity and the benefit of our clinicians choosing an application, not only for those that are relevant or available for our staff, but for the ones that we're developing in-house as well. So we're in the process of working not only here in Queensland in terms of developing our framework, but working across with other jurisdictions in terms of understanding from a national point of view, what does that look like? How do we actually categorise the apps? How do we understand the risk that comes with them? How do we continue to provide them to our patients? How do we continue to monitor their effectiveness? And when they change, how do we continue to make sure that we're across what that actually looks like? Our digital innovation strategy was launched 12 months or more ago. Again, it brings in a number of different components, one of them being a clear innovation program where we can start to take ideas or challenges from our workforce in hospital and health services or across our divisions and start to actually look at how we could address some of those challenges from a digital perspective. We have created a digital innovation portal where we can start to pick up those. We can start to then bring them back through the community, subject matter experts and vendors to help us address some of those challenges. We're really looking naturally for those that we can look to scale and look to sustain, but fundamentally our digital agenda is underpinned by an innovation agenda. We provide, additional uplift and education around what are the latest trends or changes in technology, and most recently we've had a number of showcases around artificial intelligence and drones. Again, what we're really fundamentally trying to do is build innovation within the system. There's a number of other strategic opportunities that I won't go through in detail. Suffice to say, we're going to move forward with the ones that I've just mentioned, obviously taking them through to innovation and realising the benefits is really important to us. And the last thing that I wanted to do was just give a shout out to our eHealth Expo, scheduled for the 6th of June. For those of you that haven't registered, please do. For those of you that would like to become a sponsor, happy to have a chat. And I'd like to thank you very much.
I'd like to invite our speakers up onto the stage for questions. I think for me, who'd work in health to start with, the information management challenge and bringing all that together when you look at the breadth and complexity is really key. I'm going to draw a fairly long blow and put together our first and last presentations. And interestingly, while probably don't realise that health are going to get involved in the BIM conversation as well, because the built state and the impact on health of what we put into buildings and how we put stuff in is actually really key. And one of the conversations and the use of health information is actually broadening. the health of workers and the health of Queensland citizens in things like black lung silicosis is actually a really key issue coming through from a lot of businesses. So how do we join that up? And actually digital has changed how we will do business. In the past, and I'll use an example, I've lived all over Australia and over the world, and the only way I've kept my x-rays and my family's x-rays is we carried them with us. The future hopefully is where I won't have to do that. I'll be able to access them anywhere I am. So an interesting conversation about how digital is truly changing the way we do business. A lot of time people talk about it, but here is a real example of how it will change how we all do things in the future. Okay, I'd like to call for any questions. Come on. I know this audience is always reticent. Someone must have one. Yes, one in the middle. Yep.
All interesting presentations, thank you. My name's Lachlan, I represent Fujitsu. My question is, how do you engage with partners in your technologies? With a lot of the ITOs coming to market, do you find that you are engaging with vendors way before the ITO?
I think Darren probably, can you start that one?
Yes, yeah. Certainly we do market scans. We will talk to vendors about ideas about how we would engage the market. We do that with no prejudice or no commitment or anything like that. But some partners that we work closely with, so we have closer relationships to some. We have some working with us now. We may talk to some of them about what ideas they have to go to market, because what we don't want to do is say, well, here's the market approach, and then everyone says, oh, gee, I wouldn't have done it that way, I wouldn't have constructed that way. So we will use the market to give us advice, we'll use professional services like a Gartner or someone like that, and we'll use procurement specialists as well.
I will put a plug in. We also run another program which is called Talk It Up, which is a reverse PiT, where industry come and talks to agencies. We have focused that predominantly on small to medium and startups at this stage, but that's been fairly successful, and we tend to then also focus those at specific areas. So we've had a health one, we've had a security one, etc. We've run a BIM one as well. So we actually, keep a lookout if you're not on the mailing list, but that tends to be much more a focused invite than PiT, but we do run those as well. And we are looking at more and more. I certainly know my minister's pushing us to work much more in that space and working through, and those that were at the AAA talk the other day, last Friday, would have heard him talk about how we need to engage much more with industry and use the expertise that's out there. Okay, any other question? Yep. I gave you a plug, Mark, come on.
Thanks, Andrew. One of the nice things I've thought about a number of the talks is talk about digitisation, talking about reliance on the industry, particularly for commoditised services, and obviously it's been a part of the strategy for some time, but various levels of traction on that strategy. So it's great to hear the language, and also with the plans for next financial year. Is this a reason to be a little bit more buoyant and positive about what the new financial year, maybe next year's budget might look like in terms of pushing forward the IT agenda in Queensland, and particularly from a services perspective rather than a sort of contractor and so forth perspective?
You'd be a much braver person than I am to actually presuppose what's in the budget, particularly with the Treasurer's announcements coming up.
It's a tight fiscal environment.
Yeah. But interestingly, we're not seeing any indications that investment in digital is not going to continue. I think you will see much more of what we're seeing now, which is smaller packages. The days of big bang, huge amounts of money being given to agencies to go away has gone, and you'll see around from the last, I'll use one example from the last budget. JAG are going through a foundational exercise at the moment. They've got money to do the first bit, but they've got to do that first, show what they've achieved and come back and talk about it. And actually, interestingly, it is a really big cultural change for government in the way we do business, and it's actually going to be a cultural change for industry. Everybody who walks into my office, I talk about doing the small stuff, because if you're waiting for the big stuff, you're not going to get any business. And so even the big companies are kind of looking into how do we start small, how do we work on those small packages, because the days of big stuff's gone. And interestingly, and I'm not sure you picked it up, Darren's team's already been through selection of platform. That work was done over the last 2 years. Yep. right? So it's now, we've picked a platform, this is where we're going. I'm sure they'll review that over time, and as they start going through implementation, that'll be reviewed, and that's one of the reasons we're kind of gating this stuff. So the opportunity working through, and you'll notice, I suppose I will put another plug out, there's work going on authentication identity at the moment. It's proof of concepts, we actually are running those, and if you watch transport with the digital wallet, it's about a proof of concept. It's not about, we decided what we want, we're going to just go and build it. It's about, we need to learn, we need to work, and we will work towards those issues and going forward. The challenge for us is how do you then take that into production, and that's, I think, going to be a really big challenge. But the change we've been talking about, and I suppose for 5 years, 6 years, is here in the way we do business, and so be prepared for that and understand that. Any other questions? One at the back. And looking at time, I think I might make this the last one.
Thanks very much. This is John Grief, I'm representing Semantic. I'd be very interested to hear from you guys how you see the challenges of mobile devices in your environments. Narelle actually spoke quite detailed about the sheer volume of applications that are going to come your way. But apart from managed devices, you've got BYO, and I'd be interested to understand your take on the challenges and your approach to that.
Go on, Greg, you're the new one, so go.
Yeah, look, absolutely. Mobile is something that we're pushing very hard. It's a major requirement for the business. In terms of the way we're operating, we're actually operating fully on a BYO model at the moment. There are some corporate assets that have access to our core systems via mobile platforms, but we're running essentially a BYO by default model at the moment. Now that may not be the way it lasts. I can't profess to be 100% comfortable with that, particularly in terms of the capacity to manage the devices that are corporately owned. But certainly from my perspective, the mobilisation and exposure of core business data, business processes is a fundamental plank and will only grow over time. And certainly the work that I was mentioning that we're doing in the digital context, that will all have that mobile channel squarely and the user experience around the mobile channel squarely baked into its architecture.
Narelle, you've got anything to...
Yeah, look, I think one of the great things for us is that we need to continue to leverage off BYOD. I mean, certainly in terms of the sheer number of staff that we have, we need to be able to make more and more of our systems compatible with mobile, and more people want to be able to just carry the one device wherever they are instead of, carrying a work device and a personal device and all the rest of it. They are blending them to be the same thing. So not only do we need to continue to support our workforce, as I've mentioned, but obviously our consumers and our patients coming in the door as well.
And I'd probably broaden that to go, the government's recognised that if it doesn't go mobile for its actual external services, then it's missed the boat. So a lot of work going on. And actually, interestingly, the key focus, and I'll actually mention again, is identity. And digital identity is actually one of our key challenges. And we're a long way from solving that problem, but we are certainly on the path of working on it and actually getting to the stage where the choice will be with the citizen how they actually share their data between us. And certainly it's not just the worker, it is society is going mobile. Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank Narelle, Darren, Andrew, Greg for your presentations. Thank you. It's good to see the commonalities through it. You'll receive a survey about today's content. Please provide us with your feedback so it can provide you value at these events. I'd also like, if you can, feedback how often you think these need to happen. We are looking at how often we do them in the future. We kind of had a lot and then we've eased off a bit, but we're interested in your feedback. For any future inquiries regarding these briefings, please go to the Business Queensland website to contact the PiT team. And if you know people who aren't on the mailing list, please put them on. I've got quite a few people coming to my office now that actually go, what's PiT? And I go, well, give me a card and I'll put you on the mailing list and you'll know what it is. I'd also like to thank the PiT team. These things don't happen by accident. There's a lot of hard work behind the scenes, and both my team and those from Digital Technology and Services, this is a combined event. I'd also put a plug in for the industry. For those who've been around a while, the Trivia Night is a big night of our year to raise funds for charity. We missed last year. There was a lot of other things going on, and the people organising it were kind of busy both on the industry side and on the government side. This year we're going ahead. The date's the 17th of October. I'd encourage all companies to buy seats. It is a really good night. It's really enjoyable, and it's one of the few times we all get together just to have a bit of fun and a bit of a competition. And by the way, government is leading, just as we work our way through. And finally, thank you all for attending today. I hope you found the morning presentation interesting. Please join us for tea and coffee and networking until you've got to leave and go and actually earn some more money. Thank you.